You're listening to a lifestyle podcast with Lovoni and Sarah. Our goals: to inspire good health and well-being, empowerment, beauty and joy, offering support and friendship as we share our journeys in the hopes it helps you. Hello my friends, and thanks for tuning in to what was once the Waiting Room Podcast. I'm Lovoni, and together with my co-host Sarah, we want to let you know our podcast has changed its name from the Waiting Room Podcast to simply Lovoni and Sarah. Now, along with the name change, we're doing some rebranding and developing a website, all very exciting, and we'd love you to come along on this adventure with us.
Welcome to the second part of our conversation about the most important relationship you will ever have. How you feel about yourself, how that affects your relationships, and how those relationships can actually influence how you view yourself. Welcome to the Waiting Room Podcast, episode number 9. Sarah and Lovoni here. We're going to dive straight into pick up where we left off in the last episode. We explained that we're actually recording 2 episodes today because Lovoni's away next week, and actually this is a 2-part conversation, so it works really well. But that said, just in case you want to check on what's happening, we're not going to set any new goals because it's the same day for us right here. And there's no update on the goals that we have set in the last episode, so we'll pick that up next time round. But let's just pick up where we left off then. So we were saying that, you know, the relationship that we have with ourselves, how we view ourselves, has such an impact. We gave some really good tips on how to sort of readjust and reconnect that. But I'm guessing we've both had really influenced relationships, whether it's how we influence other people, but it's more important, I think, to talk about in this episode is how they've influenced us and how we you know, think about ourselves, don't we?
Because of that, yeah.
Yeah.
In the episode 8, I was talking about, you know, and I like, again, I hate to sound like, you know, this is all sort of very kumbaya, but, you know, when you love yourself or like yourself even, in a healthy way, it shows, and you attract people who love and respect you and appreciate you, right? And that everything starts with how you feel about yourself. Well, if you don't feel good about yourself, the reverse applies to that. So if you're not liking yourself or don't think you're worthy, then you tend to attract toxic people or toxic relationships into your life. And I've certainly done that in the past.
I'm going to challenge you on that.
Oh, okay.
I used to think that myself.
Oh, yeah?
I did. I'm like, you know, how come I always seem to have people that are so broken and, you know, they need fixing,
right,
and just wrong and all that sort of thing. And then this break that I described in the last part of this conversation, where I did really, really dig deep and had a good think about myself, what I came to realise is that actually I don't think that's true. I don't think we are attracting those people or attracting different people.
And we let it happen.
Do you know what? We have the confidence and the self-belief, the self-love, the self-value to just instantly put those people out of our lives. We wouldn't even contemplate giving them our valuable time, mental energy, emotional energy. We just wouldn't do it. It was like, sorry, no, I'm worth more than that. And we don't have to make this big decision about it. It's an automatic process because we think more highly and value ourselves and our own time more highly. When we don't feel great about ourselves, when we don't have a high value of ourselves at all, we're willing to accept crumbs because we believe that's all that we're worth.
Right, which is kind of what I said. Maybe I didn't say it in a very good way.
But I agree, but I think you're saying that I don't think we do attract it any differently. I think all we do is rule them out.
We just accept it.
So in the first, you're quite right. In the first,
now I wouldn't
in our lives
as much,
but because we didn't have the value of ourselves. Right. So I don't think we do necessarily attract different people, but what we do is behave differently to those people that are put in front of us to quickly get rid of the people out of our lives that are not going to do us any good and invest more time in the ones that are.
Right.
But when you don't feel great about yourself, you probably don't even believe that you're worth talking to these people that are so much higher value in your opinion than ourselves, so you put more time into these other crumbs. Do you see what I mean? So
I see. Right, yeah.
So I don't think that we are attracting different people. I think we're behaving differently around people, and then that's how it naturally then flows. That because we don't have, that's my opinion, I don't think that there are different people being attracted. I think we just behave differently around the ones that are in front of us, and very quickly weed out all the crap and go, I'm not willing to give you my time or energy.
I'm better at doing that now, but many years ago I was absolute crap at it.
But that's because your value is you've worked out your own value better.
Right, yeah. And, you know, I mean, my first marriage was a disaster. I've talked about this before. I married someone who was an addict, and he had a lot of problems. And, you know, I was 29 when I married him, and I thought that I could fix him. Well, he was abusive. He didn't hit me, but he was verbally abusive, which, you know, people say sticks and stones, but that's not true. I mean, words cut. He was awful. And, you know, he'd come home drunk and all over and over, and would smash the house up and da-da-da. So I had 5 years of this, and just one day I decided, and it was just, I'm not doing this anymore. Yeah. I can't. And I think that there comes a time, even with yourself, and deciding to get healthy, lose weight and stuff, there's a tipping point where you just decide to fix the shit or just get rid of it, you know. And so I told him I wanted a divorce. I made him leave the home and go and get some help, and he spiraled out of control and would call me and stalked me then for 14 months I had, where I thought I was just going to lose my shit. I'd have to park my car down the street in somebody else's, you know, carport, so he wouldn't see it, so he didn't know I was home. He'd turn up, and I'd flee there and race over to my sister's, and there was one day where I turned up, I had different shoes on, or another day where I turned up, I had no shoes on, I just had to get out of the house and away from him. You know, I had my own business back then too, and he would call and leave abusive messages, or he'd call and apologise and say he wanted to see me, and when I said no, then he'd get abusive, and I'd get like 120, 130 calls a day. The police did step in, but I ended up leaving and going overseas. I came to America twice. I did that.
Oh, wow, okay.
Just to get away from him.
Well, I was just about to say, you know, anyone, God forbid, that was listening that's in a similar situation, how did you do that? But that's quite a drastic... I
had to. And so my aunt bumped into him one day. She didn't know how bad things were, but she bumped into him one day and said that, Voni just got back from America. So he knew I was home. So then it would all start again, until eventually he did apologise and just left me alone. But I remember one day, because the man had just a crazy temper, the hospital called me, and they thought he had a suspected broken neck because he'd got into a fight. And they couldn't... I mean, he was a big guy too, 6'3", just strong, and of course, you know, then your temper takes over too. Asking me, could I come to the hospital to help calm him down? We weren't divorced at this stage, we were separated. And so they could run some, you know, tests and stuff. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done, but one of them. I said, no, where I'm not his wife. Well, I am, but we're separated, and I'm not doing that. And from that moment, I didn't look back. Yeah, it was hell, but I just set my boundaries.
I was about to say, that's the boundaries that we talk about.
It's just the toxic relationship was, you know, I mean, you don't get over something like that immediately. And I went, and I think I had one session of counselling, months and months, ages later. And the lady said to me, when I told her all the things that went on, the counsellor said to me, I can't believe that you have gone through all of that, not on my own, because I had my family around me, but that I hadn't gone and spoken to anybody and got professional help and spoken to anybody about it. So, I mean, that's something too. If people are struggling, like really struggling with the relationship that they're having with themselves, whether they're in a funk or just beating themselves up, that it is okay to talk to your doctor and say, can you send me to somebody? Because I know here in the States, a lot of the health insurance will cover you going to do that. Okay. I mean, otherwise it can get expensive. But sometimes even just going to a couple of sessions can help.
Yeah.
It just gets all the shit that you have in your head out, which is what you need. And see, strangely, when I was going through all of that with him, the one thing that I think saved me from not completely, losing it. I remember one day going to my mum and saying, I feel like I'm going to have a nervous breakdown, because he was just relentless in his pursuit. Was that I walked every day. Rain, hail or shine, it did not matter. I went for a walk, and I think that it did two things. I lost a lot of weight, and it just helped ease that stress, that burden. So, but yeah, doing something like that, working out, I think is a great healer. It does make you feel better about yourself, but also talking to someone, and talking to someone that's not like a friend or a family member, going and talking to somebody that has no idea, so disconnected. Because I think then you'll be more open and honest with them. But that's okay to do that, and it's a good idea to do that. So that's just a bit of advice for people out there, and validate your feelings too. I think
absolutely.
important.
And I think and as you just described, is when you consider yourself as low value, you're willing to accept low value. So there was a time when potentially you weren't feeling that great about yourself, so you just kind of let this, his behaviour rumble for a certain period of time. But as that balance tipped the other way, as you realise that actually you do have a higher value, his behaviour wasn't acceptable. But that's really hard to do, to find your own value when someone else is telling you or behaving in a certain way, isn't it, that makes you feel low value. So even if you know who you are, if someone else tells you often enough, gaslighting or whatever it might be, that you're not worth that, or you're not good enough, or you're really poor at something, or it gets into your head, doesn't it? And it's not easy to get out of that. Not easy at all.
Even if somebody isn't necessarily telling you those things too, it's their actions. Maybe if somebody has if your partner has an affair, or if they just pay you no mind, if you're like invisible walking around, they don't notice you, they don't talk to you, those things too, can
I think that's where your own self-value gives you the validity to speak up. Right. So in my experience, when I didn't have very good value of myself, I didn't feel confident enough or able to speak up about things that weren't right or were concerning me, because I just thought, number one, you're fearful of the argument that's going to happen. Number two, you just sort of think, well, they're going to say, they're more important than me, so they're going to say something which is then going to make me look silly. Or genuinely, I had a fear that, well, they'll leave me, they'll go, and then what will I do? Because I'll be on my own, and then what am I going to do? Because I'm not going to find anyone that's better, because I'm such a low value. And that sounds really sad, but that's the sort of conversations that would run through your head, or even not knowing that that's what you were outwardly thinking. That is what was happening. Once you delve a bit deeper in your head, that's what you think. And I think that it takes, all this time, all this investment, all of this space for you to suddenly realise, I am of equal importance. I'm not more important, but I'm equally important in this relationship. To myself, I have to be the most important thing, which is not easy, because we've talked about before, putting yourself over other people is not easy. No. But within a relationship, even within a friendship, I'm not just talking about, partners here, within a friendship, there's going to be ups and downs. There's always going to be a time when one of you needs something more than the other, and then it will flip the other way again. But as long as the majority of the time it works out as a balance, then that's fine, isn't it? There's going to be a time, if you are talking about a partner who's having a hard time at work, so you're going to have to give a bit of support. There'll be a time when then you need a bit of extra, so it balances out. But I think until you can find that equal balance within yourself, you will accept all these things that are being told to you, and then it just gets in so quickly. And, you know, I can give you an example. My friends always told me that I was a really good cook, really enjoyed my food. They used to enjoy coming around for dinner. I was in a relationship where he just put down my cooking all the time. God. And I can remember to start with thinking, really? I've always been told
doing that to somebody.
Oh, I could thinking, you know, I've always been told it's quite good, but maybe they were just bullshitting me and just trying to make me feel, you know, doubt started to creep in. Then what happened? It was a self-fulfilling prophecy. Do you know what happened? I used to start going wrong on every meal. Something would go wrong. And I'm like, oh God. And then I'd be embarrassed. I'm like, I'm really sorry, but this didn't work tonight, or that didn't work tonight. Anyway, thank goodness, that relationship came to an end. I was sad about it at the time, but thank goodness it did come to an end. Then afterwards, I suddenly realised it's like, what's a load of absolute rubbish? He was just someone that was really controlling and not very pleasant.
Maybe he didn't like himself very much either.
Well, probably. And so I started cooking again, and then people started going, oh, this is really great. And slowly, I'm not an amazing cook, but I'm an okay cook. I can cook. And so it just comes back. But you have to force yourself to go through that pain of undoing what someone else has told you, because it's like that age-old thing, isn't it? If you tell a lie often enough, it becomes the truth.
Right.
And that's what you believe to be true. So if someone tells you something often enough, you suddenly believe that to be true. But that's really powerful, because you can use that to your own advantage. Right. If you tell yourself something often enough, right, it will become true. So that's the other.
That's what I just wrote a note down. Is that you know, you think you, like your friend you were saying, said that you're a good cook, and that, you know, gives you confidence. You want to do more. It's like, you know, you praise somebody, they feel good, and they want to do better, or they want to keep doing, you know, something well. So, like, you don't need that praise from somebody else. Yes, it's nice. So why can't we do that? Why can't we praise ourselves for, like, a job well done? Whether it's, you know, 10 minutes of exercise, or you know, some work that you've done, or, God, I managed to get through that, or something. Just, you know, praise yourself, because...
So I guess that taps into the Mel Robbins high five thing.
Right.
She tells you, doesn't she tell you in the morning to
give yourself a high five in the mirror? Have you ever done that?
No.
I tried it once. I felt like a dickhead, honestly. Now,
but then you just got to keep doing it.
You got to keep doing it, and it's more about you know, something she talks about what it does to your brain, and how she said that she felt like a bit of an idiot doing it to begin with, but just how it does something in your brain, it reverses something, or does, I need to listen to it again. But, the high-fiving in the mirror.
But children do it, don't they?
Lovoni, you know, you're cool. But
children are quite happy to sort of give themselves recognition when they've done something well. They're like, yay, look at me, I've done it well. They don't have this extra layer of feeling embarrassed, or feeling like they should be, you know, sort of hiding themselves away. They're like, oh no, I'm good at this, look at what I can do.
Right.
So little kids,
yeah, because they're really not told by adults to not do that.
And then it gets knocked out of you as you get older.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I used to dance in the waiting room at the doctor's. I used to, you know, get up and dance. Clearly I couldn't have been that sick if I was doing that. Exactly. It was encouraged, you know, and, you know, I'd do the hula and just, you know, dance around. Can you imagine doing that as an adult? Be like, oh my God, the woman's lost her mind.
I did see a lady once walking down the street dancing.
Oh, good for her.
And then I looked and thought, your first instinct as an adult, I think, she's a nut, what's she doing? And then I sort of corrected myself and thought, good for her, she's obviously just having a really great day, then why not? And it's all about how you change I'm really getting better at changing my judgment on people, rather than, you know, thinking these things. Just going, well, let them do what they want, you know, it's not hurting anyone.
That's their business.
Exactly.
Yeah. And see, that also is something I was thinking about when we were doing our last podcast too, is that how anybody thinks of you is their business, and that's something to remember. It really has nothing to do with them, with you. They can think whatever they like, because that's their business.
Yeah.
It's you focus on yourself and how you think about yourself, not what other people think about you.
And I think that links quite well with not having a dependency. So if you're so dependent on somebody else to validate yourself and to make you feel better, their power over you is massive, isn't it?
Right, yes.
If you're not dependent on them, then all of a sudden their power is, halved or whatever, because actually, yes, of course, everyone has an influence over what you think or feel, particularly if they're very close to you, because they do matter to you.
Right.
But it can't be the everything. It can't be the be all and end all. And there's a guy that I followed a long time ago called, I don't know if you've heard of him, called Matthew Hussey. He's basically he's a dating sort of guru guy, but what he does is talk all about making your value and making you the best version of you can be, and then everything else will then fall into place,
right,
rather than chasing. And this is the thing, I made a decision years ago, I'm not chasing any longer, I'm just not doing it. So instead of chasing someone or chasing a relationship and trying to mold it to make it work, which I've definitely been guilty of in my previous years, of going, it'll be okay because I'll force it into making it okay. Just to forget all of that, concentrate on you, add all of the good stuff into your life that you want to do, and then you've got something brilliant to match up with someone else when you meet. You can evaluate it. Is this working because we're benefiting each other? Or if it's not, then just let that one be and move on, and just one day you'll meet some. No, exactly. Because I think it's quite easy to do that, isn't it? To try and force to make things right.
One big influence on, I think, how we see ourselves is our family. Members of our family, and some parents can be cruel. Some members of our family can, be awfully cruel. But my brother-in-law said to me one time, I don't think he'd mind me saying this, just because they're family, it doesn't mean that you have to like them or love them. And, I'm lucky that I think I do love, my family, and I'm close even with my cousins, and, we stay in touch. I see them when I go home, all but one of them. And, same when I go to England, I see, some of my cousins there. And, that's one of the reasons why I go over there to see my aunt and uncle. But I think family can have such a bearing on how you see yourself. I am of the grandchildren, I'm the youngest. So I've often felt like, little Voni, which some of my sister's friends, my sister's 8 years older than me, still call me that, little Voni. Voni is like, that's what family and friends will call me. And I've felt that because I'm the youngest, that I've not been heard. And, people might disagree with me. I'm sure my sister would. But there are times when that doesn't happen, where I pipe up and say something and it gets, shot down. And I feel a bit resentful for that. And I think part of it comes because I am the youngest. But I'm trying, not to take that on board so much as I used to, although it still happens, not with everybody in the family, but with some people. And I know it's, because I'm little Voni, and that's still how they view me. So I think that's, something that you can't just, if it's a bad relationship with your spouse or a friend that's just being a spiteful bitch or whatever, you can walk away from that, but you can't necessarily walk away from your family. I think you can either address it, which I hate to do because, as you know, I hate confrontation, or you have to find a way of just not letting it get to you and thinking that's not necessarily your issue, it's theirs. And that, once again, it's their business what they think of you. But it is,
and if you can smile through it, that helps, doesn't it? Sometimes families are human beings. Everyone is their own independent person. So there's going to be so different personalities and all. You've grown up with it, so you know them very well. But they're still, still different people from you. And so these little quirks, I think that's another way of dealing with it. Is just have a bit of a smile, maybe roll your eyes occasionally, and actually just sort of think, well, that's just them. And as long as it's not really spiteful or hurtful or, intentionally trying to do something to you, I think if you can just try and let it wash over you, that helps, doesn't it? Unless it's really, really important. Because I think that's the other thing, when you know people so well, which is often the case with your family, they'd say things to you that they wouldn't dream of saying to someone else, wouldn't they? That's the thing, because you're so close. And so you've just got to make that decision. Do I react or do I just let it go past?
because just festering on it. Like, something happened a few years ago, maybe 2 years ago, in my family and with me, and I festered on that. Seriously. And I think, well, that's going to be on my piece of paper that I'm going to burn because I have to let it go. I mean, I could bring it up, and people would remember because it was quite the to do, and it was a very sad time. My mum had taken ill, and we'd all sort of gathered around to be together because my mum played mum to my cousins as well. Right. And we'd all gathered around at my sister's to, just to support each other, and everybody had gone to see mum. And then, this horrible argument broke out, and very unusual. This has never happened that I have seen with my family. And one of my cousins took his family and left, and then came back the next day to talk to me about the subject matter. And I felt like he was, he's been CEO of companies, and I felt like, I was one of his subordinates. Well, my other members of my family didn't see it like that. But that has festered with me because I think, I can have a different opinion. I can also question other people's opinion. That's my business. Doesn't mean just because your opinion differs that it's right. But, that's something that I need to let go. But I felt very disrespected, and that my voice wasn't being heard. It was handled quite badly. And I thought he was a selfish prick for walking out like that. I've since seen him. It's fine. I love him, and have a good relationship with him. But at the time, it was quite awful. And I felt very alone. And I think, don't be the victim, be the victor. And I just need to write it down and move on.
But maybe that thing of, as you described there, of just thinking that's their business. If they want to think that, then that's their business, and it doesn't make it right. It is what it is, and it's not an easy thing to do. But if you can master that ability of just letting them take their opinion and their and their passion, all of that sort of stuff, and just let that sit with them, and then you just look after yourself and like we said earlier, focus on what you want and what your life is going to be. That's a really, really good way of handling situations like that, because otherwise you can't control what people think, and you can't control what people do. All you can control is yourself, and that's it.
And then I think too, emotions get high, and you come at things from an emotional point of view rather than a logical point of view. Yeah. I worked with a great guy, and he would, he and his wife would clash and fight, and I kept saying to him, work on yourself. Like, don't look at all the things she needs to change. Look at you, and you need to, what can you do to make yourself better?
Hey, that's good. I saw something this morning which actually fits in that quite well, and I've never seen it before. You might have done, but it was a video, and there was a jug of water, and it was completely clear, or cup of water, and she got a spoonful of dirt, and she put the spoonful of dirt in the water. Have you seen this?
Nope.
And she stirred it up, and she said, this is life, okay? So life is the cup of water, and the dirt is all of the shit that inevitably is going to come along, because that's life. Things are going to happen. So put it in the water, stirred it all up, so it's all murky, and you're still thinking, you should have now look, it's tainted the entire of your life. And what you can do is use all your energy trying to scoop up those bits of dirt to get them out. So she was using a spoon, and she was trying to get them all out, but she said, and look what's happening. Every time I try and get some of the dirt out, some of the good stuff, some of life is coming out of it as well. So she kept doing it. She's like, I am getting it out, but look what's happening. The water's going down. It's still all cloudy. And she said, now look what happens. So she got a great big jug of water, and she poured it into the cup, and she kept pouring, and she kept pouring, and she kept pouring. And of course, all of the dirty water that was in there rose up, came out of the top, and came out of the glass. And then she said, and now look. So there's still tiny little bits left in there.
But they could just settle at the bottom.
The glass was predominantly clear water.
Right.
And she said, if you focus on adding more and more and more good stuff into your life, eventually the dirty stuff becomes less important, or it'll flow out, or it'll sink to the bottom, and it hasn't clouded your whole
perception.
Whole being.
Yes.
But if you use all of your energy on trying to get the stuff out of the way and gone, you're losing all of the good stuff as well.
And you're expending energy on it.
It's literally a losing battle, because you're never going to do it. So the way to succeed is to pour more of the good stuff in, and it just forces the other stuff out. And I was like, what a great analogy. And that's exactly like you were talking there. Focus on yourself.
Right.
Pour more of the good stuff into yourself, and the rest of it will just settle. It'll work out, and it'll just still be there, but it'll be at the bottom, and it won't be so important anymore, because it's like that thing they say, don't sweat the small stuff, will it be important 10 years time or even a year's time? Probably not. Just try to sort of shrink stuff. So that was interesting. I saw that this morning. That's exactly as you described. Focus on you, and the rest of it will sort itself out.
Right.
I mean, there's some things you just can't, and there's awful things, and there's things that
like
make your
abusive
heart break.
Relationship and stuff like that.
Or illness, or loss. This makes your heart break, and there's nothing you can do.
But we're
about
talking
those
about
things.
more of a day-to-day.
We're talking about the coping of the everyday,
right?
And that's a different thing, and unfortunately, there's there's coping mechanisms for that or not. But
right.
All of that aside, there's sort of the day-to-day, smaller, crappy stuff.
Right.
And a bit like you were just saying with arguments, I'm a big fan of sleeping on it. I often say that to my son, sleep on it. Sleep on a decision. I don't mean sleep on an argument necessarily, but before you make a big decision, sleep on it. Because isn't it amazing how something seems so different the next day than it did the first day?
Right.
What
it's like writing an email.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or sending a nasty text to somebody, just having that's where you're just governed by emotions, and you just react, a reactive thing.
Something massive to say about that.
Give it 24 hours.
Sleep on it, review it again tomorrow, and if it's important enough, it'll still be worth sending, but you might reword it, because the passion has been settled a little bit, where you've perhaps called them all the names under the sun. You might take those bits out, or whatever, and you still can get your core argument across, because your value is still high and you've got your boundaries. But I think there's something to be said for that as well.
And don't go near any device. If you're fighting with somebody, like a spouse or a family member or whatever, don't just leave your devices. Don't go near those.
Don't go near a knife.
No, don't go near a knife. No, especially if you've had a few drinks. Don't pick up your phone or get on your computer and do the whole bottle of Merlot email or text or whatever. Just give it some time. But I think the same. We can say the same thing about ourselves too. When you, like you said, in the last episode, that your week just went awry, and you didn't treat yourself how you would like to. So rather than dwelling on it or sending yourself the nasty email, or Sarah, you didn't, you screwed up or whatever. Yeah. You just percolate on it for a bit and think, no, I'm just going to gather myself and go on. Exactly. That's all you can do. From this point in time, I'm going to get back on, on track. So, same applies to yourself too. You were talking about, that lady with the jug of water, and I think that for people, you get so set in your ways and so set in how you treat yourself that to find things, they could be small, they could be big or whatever, that like to lean into things with curiosity and joy, like maybe find a new hobby or something, just that gives you joy, whether it's planting a garden. It doesn't have to be anything big.
Do you know what? So often people do that if they've just come to an end of a relationship. If they've had a breakup, what's the first thing they do? They suddenly start to get work on their health. They go and find a new hobby. They get busy, don't they? They do stuff, all the things that they enjoy. And I'd be like, well, do that even when you're in a relationship. Right. It's not the reason potentially it hasn't worked as well as you would like it to do is because you have completely lost yourself and you haven't got anything fresh to add. And they haven't got anything fresh to add to you. You've got to have your own interests. You've got to have your own passion for your own life. before you can share that with someone else. As I've learned, this is me sort of preaching now, because I certainly wasn't like this before. But if you think about it, it's like when you've had a breakup, that's when notoriously people then have this complete fresh start on themselves, and they look amazing, and they're doing all these interesting things and stuff, and then all of a sudden they just stop doing it when they're in a relationship.
Right.
Like, no,
so like, why?
No.
Yeah,
Keep
why?
investing in yourself.
Exactly.
Keep believing that you're the best version of you that you can be, because do you know what? Then your friend or your partner or your, or your work colleagues, whatever, will give the same vibrations back, and you'll both operate at that level. And if they don't, well, move on.
Right.
Move on and go, because that's the point. You should be around people that make you feel the best version of you that you can be, because if they're constantly dragging you down, then you've got to have a serious think about whether it's worth it or not, haven't you?
Right, exactly. I think, we're conditioned to put ourselves last. So when we do go into a relationship, you often, I don't know, I think it's easier to take the focus off yourself and on somebody else. I don't know. It seems easier. I think it seems like less work.
Sorry, did that make a big bang?
It did make a loud noise. Sarah's microphone
I did, everybody.
just hit the deck.
It did hit the deck.
She dropped the mic.
Look at that. I'm so down with the kids. Right, I do apologise.
But yeah, I think before, when you're in any of these relationships, like I said, it doesn't matter what it is. It starts with the healthy relationship you have to have with yourself. And so, so ways to do that are to check in with yourself and validate your feelings. So yesterday, before we started recording the last podcast, I had said to Sarah, I felt like this black cloud was over me, not grey, so I started journaling and writing, and all of a sudden I felt that just a glimmer of hope. I said it was like did I talk about this?
Yeah, you did.
I didn't talk about it to you, but did I talk about it on the podcast?
Yeah,
just seeing that little glimmer of light. Yes. So, and I think it was because I validated my feelings. I feel shit. I feel depressed. But in doing that, it made me feel better. A bit better. Granted, I wasn't skipping around the house, but it did make me feel a bit better. So I think that that's something that people can do to validate your feelings, whether you're validating them to a person or whether you're just writing them down or just internalizing that you're validating how they are. It doesn't mean, you want to furnish them and stay there if they're bad feelings, but just to validate them. Because I think that's the same for a lot of people. A lot of people, kids or spouse that's maybe being moody or whatever, they just want their feelings validated. So I think that's one thing how you can help themselves. But to make time for the things that you enjoy, that could be, cooking a roast chicken dinner, or just, like I was saying, leaning into things with curiosity and joy, finding a hobby, or just doing something that, that you like. Setting some boundaries, so sticking up for yourself. Doesn't mean that every conversation has to be an argument, because that could possibly be with my husband. But just, learning the hill to die on. But definitely setting boundaries. And they need to be clear boundaries. It can't be, like you set a boundary one day and the same thing happens the next. And you know what I mean? You have to be consistent with them. Journaling, that helps. Therapy is another thing. We talked about that. Because mentally, if you do these things and and you learn to like yourself better, if like me, that, you struggle with that, it can improve like my mental health, your connection with others, your productivity. That's another thing for me, is when I'm really beating myself up, I find, and it's a catch-22 thing, that my productivity goes down, that I'm not producing the work that I want to. But then at the same time, when I'm not doing that, I talk to myself bad. You know what I mean? Just goes around and around like a mouse in a wheel. Yeah. Nurture yourself a bit, and that doesn't necessarily mean you have to go and, have a massage or whatever, although that does sound nice. But do things that make you, could be sitting having a cup of tea, reading a book, just nurture yourself. I
would put in there sort of it included for your day, and we spoke about it in a previous podcast, is about dressing for your day is included in that nurture, isn't it? Dress for your day, spend a few extra minutes making yourself feel like you're happy with how you're presenting yourself to the world, because there's something to be said about getting up, getting dressed, and getting out there.
Making your bed,
even when you don't feel like it, get up, get dressed, put your lipstick on and go and do it.
Right.
You know, they say sort of straighten your crown and off you go. And because I think there is, isn't there?
Right.
Even when it becomes a self-fulfilling thing, you know, even when you feel like you just don't want to do it, shower, dress, straighten your crown and off you go.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, that's part of the nurture thing, is just to give yourself that little boost. And that's what you would do for someone else, isn't it? If someone else felt really rotten, you would look after them that way. So just do the same thing for yourself.
You take them out to lunch, or you bring over, you know, cake.
Or just make a nice cup of coffee or whatever.
Make a cup of coffee. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then, you know, if these things aren't working, like if somebody really feels, I mean, I'm not talking about the depressive, I want to go and slit my wrists kind of thing, or that you're just in not a funk. I hate to diminish anybody that suffers terribly with depression.
No, if you're truly depressed, that's something different.
Then yes, that's where I think, like, talking to a therapist, talking to your doctor, and, you know, maybe looking at ways to help that is better. So I'm talking about things that you can do on an easier level. Yeah. And you know, food, don't anybody that's listening, don't discount how much food plays into how you think about yourself and your mental state, because if you're nurturing yourself, that also means eating well, not overeating, small meals, nutrient dense. So, you know, if you're eating crap and lots of sugar, you're going to beat yourself up. It's just going to be a shit fight. It really is. Yeah. You're not going to feel good. And you're going to have that conversation. The guilt's going to set in. You get right or wrong. You're going to have that conversation with yourself about, you know, shoulda, woulda, coulda, whatever. And it just perpetuates. So, you know, a little bit of exercise, 10 minutes even, you know. Yep. You were saying stay hydrated, because that means...
massively helps.
Oh, your brain needs water, okay? I mean, your body does, but your brain needs water. And then, you know, eat nutritious food. I think they're vital to how we think about ourselves. Mm-hmm. Try some, you know, self-care. Around the same time every day. I think that's where the routine that we've talked about in the past comes into it.
Yeah, your brain recognises what's going to happen, doesn't it?
Right, yeah, exactly. Alrighty, so if anybody has got any sort of tips or things that they do,
that's different from anything that you've talked
or
about.
A good book, you know, like a good sort of self-help book, because I mean, this all really, you know, Sarah and I talk about these things. At the crux of it all, of course, is, you know, the weight loss and you know, weight gain, weight loss, is, you know, wanting to lose weight, wanting to get healthier, but all these things are at the crux of that. Yes. You know,
living life well, isn't it? And that's why.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, if you want to lose weight, and I've said this before, you can go on any diet and lose weight, obviously, if you stick to it. But if you haven't dealt with the fundamentals of why you put on weight in the first place, it's going to come back and haunt you. It will come back on, and you won't stick to it. So this is all part of, you know, that a lifestyle change, lifestyle choices, and this is one of the most important things in this whole thing. Well, it is the most important thing, is how you see yourself. If you keep seeing yourself as somebody that, you know, you think you screw up, you don't think you're worthy, you talk negative things to yourself constantly, you're going to keep going round and round on that merry-go-round. That's what you believe. Yeah. And, you know, Sarah and I have talked about before too, is the whole fake it till you make it thing. But, you know, if you've got to do that, then do it. You know, you just be kind. I mean, be kind to yourself. It sounds so easy to do. And, you know, and then appreciate the days that you don't as well, because it's like any relationship.
Yeah.
It ebbs and flows. It's not always going to be rah, God, I'm fabulous. And I think give it time, because it's a learning thing. We have learnt, you know, for years to not like yourself or to put yourself down, or, you know.
I think it's to judge yourself, isn't it? You just constantly judge yourself. Yeah.
So, you know, it's not going to happen overnight to reverse that. You know, if you have these little quirk things like I was talking about, I think in episode 8, where I criticise myself for it because I'm like a bull in a china shop, where my husband laughs at it, just learn to laugh at some of the things that you do. Maybe don't take yourself so seriously all the time. Even with work, you know, unless you're somebody operating on someone's brain or, you know, something like that, then that's different. But, you know, I say to people too sometimes when I'm on a photo shoot styling and something, you know, a cake's not working out or it's sinking or something doesn't look right and people get all in a panic. I think, oh, gosh, it's just food. Yes, we want this to look good, but look, you know, let's just reassess how can we do this differently, or you know, present it differently, or something like that. It's not brain surgery. It's not a life or death situation. So, you know, give yourself a little slack and have a bit of a laugh at your, you know, self every now and again. Hey, shouldn't we? We should all learn to do that. And you know, just be kind. Be kind to yourself. I'm going to go through the day being kind to myself, which is going to mean after I get off this podcast, I'm going to work out, and then I'm going to go and deliver a poo to Ramsey's vet. Not my poo, by the way. That would be Ramsey's.
I'm not sure this is quite what we were expecting.
I've been following her around with this teeny tiny little scoop to go into a vial, because he was sick on the weekend. So like just waking us up constantly throughout the night sick. So then they, you know, had to take him to the vet, and they gave me this little thing and they said you need to collect a sample. I'm like, oh God.
Well, that's easier than a wee sample. Have you ever tried to collect a wee sample?
Oh, I'm sure he'd probably stop. Yeah, I bet. Gosh. Anyway, so I'm going to do that today. Nice. That would be nice.
And then you can set fire to your mountain of
carried
around.
I'm going to do that.
Grudges.
I'm going to do that as well. I have to try and remember to video it, because
please do. 'Cause I want to see it.
And then, you know, suddenly between that. Like, I'm doing an internal purge. So I'm purging on the house, and now I'm going to do an internal purge. It probably won't happen just, you know, in one day.
Probably not. It sounds like you've got a few.
I know, right? Gosh, I'm going to maybe I need to write them out, like type them out on the computer. I can type faster than I can write. It'll be just like
fresh streaming paper.
Right. Oh, and miracles. And then I'll let you all know, because we'll be talking again in 2 weeks,
and we'll share it on our Instagram
1 week
story.
Yeah, I'll let you all know how I feel, if it had any bearing on how my state of mind. Right? Yeah.
I hope it works for you.
I know. I think it does. I'm just going to get them out and not read them back. There you go.
Yeah, don't keep going over them. No, write them once and then off they go.
Right. So, so this is episode. What are we at? Episode 9.
9.
And then, gosh, and we always like to talk about what we're doing in the following episode, which will be episode 10, obviously. 10. Yeah. Oh, what are we going to talk about, Sarah? Because we haven't decided that. We always decide. We plan these ahead.
We do normally decide,
but because we're doing 2 back to back.
We have talked about maybe guilt. How about guilt?
I think yes. I think guilt's a good one. Yeah,
I think it can influence a lot of things we've talked about today, but it can influence your choices, and and
it just eats away at you too. Yeah,
it does.
Yes. Okay. So episode 10, which will be the next one after this, is going to be about guilt. So stay tuned for that one. You've been listening to the Waiting Room podcast with Sarah and Lovoni. Thanks for tuning in, and make sure you subscribe to us. We now on Facebook, so I think it's like facebook.com
anyway,
yeah, the waiting room podcast. So we're on Facebook, so please follow us, like us on that, and we're also on Instagram as well. Yeah, so give us a follow, and we put out recipes as well. Sarah does some really great motivational quotes on Instagram. I might have to steal some of those to put onto to Facebook.
And we're going to start to. I think it'd be really helpful. We've just started with the top tips, I think, from each episode, so people can then revisit those if they want to. So they can then, per episode, find our top 5 tips from each one. So that might help when they're trying to approach each one of those subjects.
Yeah. So those I put onto my website, which is freshhunger.com. So the one from 2 weeks ago, which was parenting, I have put that one on. And then I will put the self-awareness, the relationship that you have with yourself, I will put that up there as well. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We're watching. We're hoping to do that in the future. We are going to do that. We are going to do that in the future. And also,
glorious faces.
Right? And then on the next episode too, we'll have to talk about my trip coming up. But I'll wait and talk about that. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
See you in the next one.
Bye now.